It's Tuesday, December 23rd, and we're delighted to have you back on our weekly Tuesday night video chat. Thrilled. It is Christmas Eve. So if you've waited until today to do your Christmas shopping, you're in probably a relative panic. And you deserve it. And you probably shouldn't be here. It's pretty last minute. So let's start in on the letters that have been sent to me. And if you do have a question in the middle, so go ahead and send it to me, and we'll see if we can get to those. In our last chat, or possibly the one before, I'm not sure, I read a letter from a man who said that his girlfriend, whom I renamed Susie, and I can't recall what her real name is, broke up with him because of, in his words, how I treated her, because I wasn't comfortable with me being me. And he talked a little bit about his insecurities and frustrations, but it was all very vague. And so it was very difficult for me to help him specifically. And I told him that. So he wrote back, and he said this. He said, I have a problem with being a perfectionist. I expect myself to be the best at everything, you name it. School, work, music, sports, everything. I also expect to be the best at whatever I'm interested in with limited effort, which I realize is irrational and lazy. When success is not immediate, I tend to get frustrated and give up or take that frustration out on those around me, including my girlfriend. And remember, he said that his girlfriend had left him. If work would anger me, I would come home and complain and ignore her attempts at ignore her attempts at comfort. If my hockey team or he was a coach of a JV hockey team, played poorly, I would leave the ice and be angry for a long time afterward. Or even if the team I was watching on television wasn't winning, I would get irritated and distance myself from her and everyone else. I realize now I was being completely irrational, and no one wants to be around me when I'm like that. I can see now that my priorities were out of whack. So see, now, in the first letter, you were telling me nothing. Now you're getting somewhere. So you're describing yourself as somebody who is empty and alone and who is pushed over the edge by nothing. I mean, here you're describing getting angry and withdrawing and taking your anger out on your girlfriend when the team that you're watching on television, of all things, is not winning. I mean, that's really going over the edge for nothing. I mean, when your television team is losing, good heavens. And you describe perfectionism. Perfectionism is just a need to control things in an empty world or in an empty life. People have to have things perfect because they're empty and afraid, and they have to control stuff. So your life is just filled with emptiness and fear. And then she finally said, I've had it. Nobody wants to be in a relationship with somebody who's that empty and afraid and controlling. Then you continue. Throughout our relationship, I also hid from Susie what I wanted. She would tell me that she was looking forward to settling down and being a mother. And I, in fact, wanted the same thing. But I repeatedly said that instead I wanted more experiences in life, like travel and so on. It was a lie, and I regret ever saying it. Sure, I wanted to travel and do other things, but not as much as I wanted to be happy and have someone to share my life with. I'm not sure why I lied about it. And what I'm telling you is, yes, you do know why you lied about it. If we've never known anything but imitation love, if we've never known real love, imitation love is the only thing that we know. So all we've known is excitement and pleasure. And when somebody talks to us about settling down and having a family and being only with them, with only one person, then what they're doing is talking about choking off our potentially limitless supply of imitation love. And wow, I mean, that's frightening. That's why you said that you wanted more experiences. What you were saying to her is, hey, honey, I don't want to settle down with you. I want to keep having these great experiences with imitation love. And you were not lying. You meant it. You meant it when you said you wanted to keep playing around, because you weren't done with imitation love. You were sincere about that. You did want more life experiences. Now that Susie's left you, you think you were lying when you said that, only because you're sorry to see her leave. So what you're saying is you want both. You really do want the continued experiences with imitation love, and you want her to stay. You're just confused. You want it all, and you can't have it all. She's telling you you can't have it all. So you want to be in both camps at the same time, and she won't let you. And why should she? So you're in pain, and in this moment of her leaving, you think that she's your primary priority, but you're just kidding yourself. Because if she came back, you'd make her your number one priority for a few minutes, but then you'd want to go back to enjoying imitation love again. So you're just confused. Then you continue. Maybe I'm afraid to grow up. Maybe a nomadic lifestyle seemed more important and appealing, and I fooled myself into wanting it. Whatever the lie stemmed from, I'm not lying about it anymore. Actually, you're still lying. You're not doing it consciously, but you're just fooling yourself. When we don't have enough real love in our lives, we simply respond to whatever our pain is in the moment. And again, I'm not accusing you of lying consciously, but you're just responding to whatever's hurting you right now. So when you had her in your life, you enjoyed that, but you got accustomed to it. You got bored with it. It wore off, and then you wanted more exciting experiences. And now that she's leaving, you want her. So you respond to whatever's hurting you right now. So you essentially move from one crisis to another. And you don't really know what makes you genuinely happy. You're just endlessly confused. You have no roots. So, and that will continue for the rest of your life until you find what really makes you happy. And that's the pattern of most people's lives. Most people move from one source of imitation love to another, and they never find real happiness till they're dead. So I suggest that you learn more about real love. You learn to tell the truth about yourself. You find people who can love you unconditionally, and it will make a huge difference in your life. And I suggest that you learn to do that independent from your girlfriend. You're not ready to be in an exclusive relationship with a woman. You're just not. She would be too confusing to you right now. So get on the website, practice telling the truth about yourself in the teleconference calls. Find out what it's like to be unconditionally accepted by people that you're not in an exclusive relationship with, and then prepare yourself for the next exclusive relationship before you rush into it and blow another relationship. You just need to learn more about what unconditional love is. And that's true of almost everybody. Don't feel unique in this. And I'm not making fun of how you did it. In no way. This is how most people go into relationships, is unprepared, and then it's almost inevitable that they'll have this experience. Here's somebody who says, I use prescription drugs. I do it to get high, to feel good, to get rid of the fear, the anxiety, and the terror that I often feel. And it gives me a few hours of peace and calm. Well, hardly a surprise to say that. I mean, that's pretty much the reason that people use drugs, prescription or otherwise, is to get rid of some feeling of pain. It's why people use prescription drugs. It's why people use illegal drugs, is to get rid of pain. You continue. I just got back from spending a week in Texas visiting my mother. And while I was there, I found a plastic bag of her old, expired, unused medication under the bathroom sink. In it was a bottle of painkillers. Surprise, I took the bottle and had been taking one pill almost every day. Earlier this year, I found a bottle of my husband's painkillers that he wasn't using. Again, I took one a day until they were all gone. I understand. I was a drug addict for years and years, and that's why I took the drugs. I didn't take narcotics almost every day because I had a need for narcotics. It's because they gave me moments of emotional oblivion, rest. And it wasn't a healthy rest, like the kind where you take a nap. It was emotional unconsciousness. And you're probably a bit ashamed of your behavior, which is understandable, but it's more productive to just understand your behavior. It's about the pain. And the more you understand it and can talk about it and feel loved while you talk about your behavior, the less inclined you'll be to repeat it. You continue. All this year, my doctor prescribed painkillers for tooth pain until I could get an appointment with the dentist for a root canal. Same story. After the tooth pain was resolved, I kept taking one pill a day until they were all gone. In my younger days, I took lots of painkillers, tranquilizers, sleeping pills, recreationally. Again, it's the same story. I don't actively seek out the drugs. If I have them or if they cross my path, I use them. If I don't have them, then I get along fine without them and I don't even think about them. But I love the feeling I get from these drugs. If I had an endless supply for the rest of my life, I think I'd take them every day. So, it's obvious that you have found other ways of dealing with life. And you use those other ways. You don't go into what those other ways are, but obviously you haven't found enough other ways to get rid of the pain. So the pain is right there under the surface in your life. And there's enough pain that when you find the pills, you go right back to using the pills to get rid of the pain. So what's the solution? You be aware of the fact that your pain is still there. You still feel empty. You still feel alone. You still feel afraid. And it's something you need to talk about. You need to talk to friends and say, I still must have quite a bit of this pain. Or I wouldn't be having this ever-present, dormant need to use these pain pills. Because if I come across a bottle, poof, I use them. So talk about what underlies that. Talk about what you're afraid of. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of not being loved. I don't feel entirely loved. I feel afraid of people not liking me. Talk about your fears with your friends. My guess is that you don't connect with people very regularly and that you don't feel very unconditionally accepted. I'm guessing that my bet's not very far off. And if you were to talk to people about that regularly and feel unconditionally loved enough by them, gradually your emptiness would go away such that eventually, when you came across a bottle of pills, you'd say, I don't really need to do this. And you'd hand the bottle of pills to somebody else. So for now, just be aware of it, talk about it, get what you need. Here's somebody who says, I have a friend at work, we'll call her Sylvia, that I started sharing the principles of real love with. Her mother started going through a series of husbands when Sylvia was 11. And as a teen, Sylvia started drinking and having sex with a lot of guys. In her late teens, she met a guy who said that he wanted to wait until he got married before having sex, which for her was really weird. So she had sex with him initially, but then he said that he wanted to wait for like a year before they got married. And so they did. They waited for like a year before with not having sex before they got married. And she was really surprised at what sex was like after they got married. Before marriage, she had always enjoyed sex. It was exciting and frequent. Of course, before she got married, when she had sex, she was always drunk. Her husband was the first man she'd ever had sex with sober. And now she's discovered she just doesn't get quite the same excitement out of it. They have a baby daughter, life is kind of ordinary, and so is sex. In fact, things that she used to like, little ordinary things, like having him suck on her ear, for example, now she just doesn't like it. In fact, it kind of annoys her. And she doesn't know how to talk to him about how she feels about that or about sex. And she feels embarrassed that she's faking that she likes it and fakes being in the mood. So how can I best help her? And what book would you suggest for her to read first? I'm going to give her a real love book for Christmas, and then we have a lot of time during the day to discuss it. So what I would suggest to her is that, in the first place, all she's ever known in her life is imitation love. So in the beginning, sex was, spectacular, because sex is wow. I mean, it's just a bushel full of imitation love, isn't it? I mean, with sex you get just great quantities of praise and power and pleasure and wow, woohoo. I mean, it's just great. It's just a fire hose of all three. Now that she's been, married for a while, she's discovered that the imitation love part of sex is pretty much worn off, which it always does. The imitation love part does. And she's wondering why. And that's because all sources of imitation love eventually wear off. So what's the solution? The solution is to find the real thing and to find the real love component of her entire relationship, including sex. So it's for her to learn about real love. It's always about real love. So I would suggest that she read the Real Love and Marriage book as a start, since she is married. And, eventually, as she learns more about real love and marriage and perhaps introduces this to her husband, to suggest that she and her husband do the 40 Days in Real Love book workbook together, she and her husband. And as they do that, they'll discover what pretty much everybody does, and that is that they won't have this compulsive need as much as they used to have sex, but they'll also discover that as they experience more unconditional love together, they'll discover what sex they do have will be much more fulfilling, even fun than it used to be. And they'll be able to talk about it with each other. There's a whole chapter in the Real Love and Marriage book just about sex and how to talk to each other about what they like, what they enjoy, and to be able to talk about it in a really very straightforward, loving way with each other so that they can discover what they like and what they'd like to give and what would be unconditionally giving and loving and sharing, and man, what would be fun, as opposed to a burden and faking it. And I mean, does that sound enjoyable? Does that sound loving? Not too. And then you continue. She asked me several times what she can do so her daughter does not do the same things she did. Mind you, they have a baby daughter, so it might be a little too soon to be worried about that. And how much information about her mistakes is too much information when her daughter gets older. I wouldn't be worried at this point about what would be too much information to tell her daughter when she doesn't even know anything about real love at this point. I really wouldn't. But for other people who are listening, learn a whole lot more about real love first. And then, as you become more versed in the principles of unconditional love, you'll discover that as you teach the principles of real love to your children, and as you communicate with them what unconditional loving is and how to rule their lives or guide their lives according to the principles of unconditional love, which will simply make them happy, your children will be thrilled to listen to you as you teach them guiding principles, just because they can see that you're happy. If you're happy, they'll be tickled to have you teach them the principles that made you happy. Do you get that? I mean, just in the same way that if somebody is a world-class basketball player, and if that person's the most successful basketball player on the planet, Michael Jordan, for example, and he puts out a basketball video, well then all the young kids are only too happy to buy that basketball video. Why? Duh. Because they're only too happy to learn the principles that made him a great basketball player. Hello? Everybody's only too happy to buy a book or a video put out by Tiger Woods, who plays golf, because, well, they figure if it made him great, they want to learn those principles that will make them great. Same thing is true with you and your kids. They don't want to hear your lecture about how they should live their lives if you're unhappy. Why should they listen to you teach them principles that would make them like you if your life stinks? But if you're happy and you're telling them how to live, they're going to go, well, okay, well, yeah, why not? I'll give that a shot. So as your kids get older, if you're happy and you say, well, here's a way to live life, they're going to go, yeah, all right. They're really not going to be very interested in the details of your sexual mistakes. Really. I'm no kidding. So you're going to be just simply teaching them correct ways to live. If you then say to your kids, would you like to know the list of my sexual mistakes? They're going to be going, that would be, in the language of the kids, TMI. That's too much information. What do they care? They don't. So you really don't have to tell them. You're not keeping it a secret. You're not lying to them. They just don't care. Here's somebody who writes, who wrote last time, I've been struggling with clutter in my life. I thrive in an organized environment. However, you wouldn't know that by looking at my house. After years of being depressed, my house became very cluttered and not a thriving environment for my family. Right now, my husband is on a business trip for a week, and I was motivated to organize the entire house while he was away. I've planned for different friends to come in at different times to help me. It's been amazing, and we've gotten rid of over 500 pounds of junk in the last 6 days. An amazing high to do this and see the rooms that we've finished. In the last couple of hours, though, I've realized that I've become immobilized around the clutter when I'm alone and become very stuck. I feel like an addict of clutter, and that it has a hold on me when I'm alone. But when others are around me, I become stronger and can accomplish more. I want to be able to work through whatever it is that is emotionally holding me back. So it's helpful to understand why we accumulate clutter. So first, how do we get it? How do you get the clutter? Well, you know, some people just sort of glibly say, psychologists do, that clutter results from overspending. Well, duh. That's kind of obvious. But then the next question is, why do we overspend? I mean, it's kind of obvious to say that it results from overspending, but why do we spend the money? We spend the money because when you walk, you know, we may feel empty and alone in our lives because it's always about real love. You may feel empty, you may feel afraid, you may feel worthless, you may feel alone. But when you walk into a store or even you order online, you instantly become a powerful person. You instantly have the ability to create power and pleasure. Because when you have a credit card, you make trains move, planes fly, store clerks suddenly worship you, kiss your feet, ask you what you want. You can make new packages arrive at your door. You can make fun, shiny objects appear that you get to unwrap. You get to have fun conversations with your friends about, oh, what did you get and where did you get it, and blah, 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 blah. You can start. It is fun. So you get praise, power, pleasure. Shopping and buying things creates just a regular, well, if you'll excuse me, shopping basket filled with imitation love, doesn't it? It is a hoot what you can do just with shopping. So the the spending immediately creates fun. And then we have the things that we bought. So now we have a house full of the things that we bought. Well, then why don't we just get rid of them? So the clutter, that starts the clutter. But we don't get rid of them because it's very difficult then to let go of what we bought. Because now we have to let go of the power that we got from those things, the sense of power, the pleasure that we enjoyed from the things that we got, and the memories that we got of the past. And we have to let go, we have to essentially admit, in many cases, that we were wrong to buy those things. So look at all the things that we have to do to get rid of clutter. We have to let go of the pleasures, we have to let go of the memories of the past, we have to go, ooh, I made a mistake, and throw it out the back. That's a whole lot of decisions that have to be made in order to throw a single item out. Now, to clean out an entire room, are you kidding me? We're paralyzed. So, no, I get it. But see, once you understand it in terms of real love, that you're giving up all of those forms of imitation love, it's overwhelming. So I really do get it. Then, if you add laziness to it, that it's a whole lot of work to get rid of those things, and that they're very difficult decisions, it's just it's just way too much. Now, why is it easy for you? Easier when you have friends around. Oh, well, it's much easier when you have a friend who's nudging you and saying, oh, you can just get rid of this. Because now, in the process of getting rid of that, as the friend says, oh, let's just throw this out, then you can earn actually a little bit of imitation love in the form of a little bit of approval. So you're giving up a little bit of imitation love, but you're actually getting some. And your friends give you the, shall we say, group courage to continue doing what you know that you really need to do. So kind of a hoot, huh? That there's a little exchange of imitation love there. As you throw out some of the imitation love, you get some back as you're losing some. It's kind of a hoot. So that's why it's a little easier for you to do it with other friends. And if you have the right kind of friends, if you have real love friends, they can actually accept you unconditionally as you're throwing things out. And then that makes it really easy. So if you tell the truth about yourself as you're decluttering your house, if you say, with a little tear in your eye, I'm having to give up some of my imitation love, and tell the truth about it, you can make it way easier on yourself. Here's somebody who says, our 12-year-old son is usually very responsible about doing his homework and gets very good grades without any input or pressure from us. We were very surprised to receive a phone call today from his teacher saying that he had not turned in an important assignment. We had asked on the weekend if he had completed all the assignments. The teacher noted on a card sent home, and he had implied that he had. He's now working on the assignments as we speak. He said he had lost the directions and was too busy with baseball to do the assignment. Again, this is very unusual, and he had received A's on his finals. What do you suggest as a consequence? We heard a parenting expert say that consequences should be about adding something for them to do rather than taking things away. So, let me emphasize that consequences are for the purpose of teaching a child, not for the purpose of punishing a child. So, like you just said, this child is usually very responsible. So if the child is usually responsible, and this is an exception to the rule, if this is an unusual thing, then does the child really need to be taught anything? Probably not. Then does he need a consequence? No. All you need to do is sit with the kid and go, what happened with that assignment? And the kid goes, well, I lost the directions and I was too busy with baseball. And so then you say to the kid, so do you see that you are responsible for not doing the assignment. You just make sure that he's telling the truth about it. You make sure that he accepts the responsibility and isn't making somebody else responsible. Well, my dog ate the assignment. Well, I couldn't help it. You just make sure he's being responsible, accepts responsibility for it, and that it's not happening repeatedly. And if he's being responsible, what does he need a consequence for? If he gets the point, and he's on the whole being responsible and doing his work, a consequence is foolish. We did not impose consequences on our children if, for example, they failed to do an assignment around the house just once in a while. Well, shoot. If a kid's overall doing their job, what do we need to teach them a lesson for? Then the kid looks at us and goes, hey, Dad, I didn't do my job. I got it. I'm going to go back to doing my job. And you're going, okay. What do you need to teach a child when he's telling you he's got the point? So you're done. Now, if it's repeatedly, then you say to the child, all right, so what do we need to do here so that you're getting the point? Then you talk about a consequence. And as far as a consequence being about adding to rather than taking from, that didn't make any sense, actually. The consequence is just about making not doing the right thing inconvenient. And you make it inconvenient in whatever way makes sense. Whatever makes sense in the moment. So, for example, if a child isn't doing his homework, well, what makes sense? Around our house we said, if you don't do your homework, you don't get to do anything else until you do your homework. Nothing else. So, you don't play, you don't use the computer, you don't talk on the phone with your friends, you don't eat, you don't do nothing. You work before you play. It's a pretty simple rule to remember in our house. Work before play. It was 3 words long. All the kids understood that. If you wanted to play with your friends, if you wanted to do anything, you simply did your homework. Pretty simple, huh? As opposed to writing this long legalistic set of rules. Work before play. How hard's that? If they consistently violated that, then we would say, you want to make this hard? Then there will be not only no privileges, but you can stay in your room for several days if you'd like. Then if that didn't work, then we'd say, and if you want to make it really hard, then if you'd like, we could add jobs, I suppose. You can do your brother's job for a week. Whatever. You'll come up with whatever it is. You just make it sufficiently and for every kid it's different. Whatever a kid hates most, do that. Question. Guy and a girl go on a second date and they're having a drink at an outdoor bar. So, guy and a girl. A good girlfriend of the girls walks by and sees them and sits down and joins them for a drink. So now we have a guy and a girl and the girlfriend of the girl. And she's having a drink too. When she leaves, the girlfriend of the girl, the bartender brings the bill. And the guy does not offer to pay for the girl's girlfriend's drink. So the drink of the girl who left. But then, later in the evening, the guy pays, $50 for a carriage ride for his date. The girl really wants to tell him that she would have been more impressed if he had paid for her friend's drink than for a $50 carriage ride. So, what do you say in telling the truth? Does she tell him that? Or do you only consider telling the truth meaning telling something about yourself that you have done? Well, this is pretty picky. $1's $1. Does it matter whether he spends $1 on the carriage ride or does he spend $1 on his date's girlfriend's drink? If she wants to be that picky, if she wants to be an accountant about how he spends his money on her, he could. But really, it's none of her business. to tell him how he should spend his money. None. None of her business. So she could, if she wants to, she could say, I would have preferred that you spent, but she would be an idiot to do that, because she would be requiring him to show love to her in a particular way. That's essentially saying, in order to love me, you have to deliver love to me in exactly this way. It has to come to me in a box, in a purple ribbon, delivered by a man at 3:30 on the doorstep in such and such a fashion. That's pretty picky, kind of snotty actually. Paying the bill for a certain thing is kind of superficial fluff. Now, it might have been nice, sure. Would it have been nice for him to do? Yeah, I suppose. But just note it as information. So, for example, maybe the reason he didn't pay for the bill for her girlfriend was that he was cheap. But maybe not. It may have been that he was just gathering information. Maybe he was just trying to see if she expected him to pay for everything. Who knows? We don't know the answer to that. So what I would suggest is when you're dating somebody, that you do what I suggest in the Real Love and Dating book, which is you practice being truthful about yourself. Tell the truth about your own mistakes and flaws and fears, and then you gather information about your partner. And watch and see if your partner can tell the truth about himself or herself. Stick with watching for the ability to tell the truth and the ability to be unconditionally loving and accepting as you tell the truth about yourself. Those are the important qualities. If you start fussing about little things about, let's see, did he pay for the drink, but did he pay for the, not pay for the drink, but he paid for the carriage, gee, that's pretty fussy little stuff. Unless, of course, he pays for absolutely nothing. I mean, if you go out for a guy and he pays for zero, nothing, doesn't pay for himself, pushes the bill in your direction, is a freeloader and cheapskate about everything, okay, that'd be worth noting. But this particular question, pretty fussy. Second example. Girl hires a good friend's husband to do some handyman work. And he comes over and he makes several sexual comments. So this is a girl who hires a girlfriend's husband. And when he comes over, he makes several sexual comments to her. One about how, well, if he can't hit on his wife's friends, who can he hit on? And the girl has, huge respect for her friend, so she's concerned, that her friend's husband would do such a thing. And she wonders what to do. Should she tell her girlfriend that her husband was hitting on her? You could report on every little single thing that you ever hear in your life, but I'm going to suggest that it's none of your business. First thing I would suggest to you is, do you think that he doesn't demonstrate this behavior when he's around her? That he doesn't flirt with other women when he's around her? Do you think when he's around her, I've never known a philandering guy, a guy who looks at other women who doesn't do it all the time. So if he's hitting on other women when he's over there being a handyman, if he's doing that, he's also looking at other women when he's around his wife. He is. He's looking at them. He's glancing as they go by. He's making little sexual comments about them when his wife is around. He's watching television shows and looking at women as they're undressing when his wife's in the room. What I'm telling you is this. You're not going to be telling her anything that she doesn't already know. That's what I'm saying. His wife already knows that, at least in his thoughts, he's very unfaithful to her. That's what I'm telling you. Now, are there any circumstances under which you would call her and tell her that something was going on? Yeah. If you knew that he was having sex with another woman, would you call and tell her? Yeah, I would. Why would I? Because that's different. Because in that case, he's clearly violating a contract. And in that case, he's actually endangering her health, possibly her life. And in that case, he's entered into the area where it's possibly a deal breaker between them. And if he's possibly endangering her health and her life by having sex with somebody else, oh, that's an entirely different deal. She knows that he's cheating on her in his mind, but it's very possible that she may not know that he's actually having sex with another woman. But you better know that before you call her up and tell her that. Here's somebody who writes and says, after 18 years of marriage and 3 children, my wife wants out of our marriage. She's gone back to school and graduates in June of 2009. She feels that I've emotionally neglected her, although I've never abused or cheated on her. She wants a 3-month separation to see if this is what she really wants. I do not want to get a divorce, but realize I cannot force her to stay. Beginning after Christmas, she'll spend 3 days at our house with our children, and I'll spend 4 days there with them per week on our off days. And then on our off days, she and I, will stay with relatives. It's a little confusing, but it makes sense to him. She's refused any type of marriage counseling and doesn't even want to see or talk to me. She feels like I'm smothering her and says that she needs her space. I've moved to the basement where we have an outside entrance and have tried to give her the space she needs. I don't know what to do. How do I apply real love when she wants no contact? Now, I want you to notice the language that you've used. This is pretty important stuff. You said, she feels that I have emotionally neglected her. Notice, you didn't say you had, you said she feels that I have. So far you're taking no responsibility at all for doing that. No, you're just detached from it. You're saying she claims I've emotionally neglected her, but I really haven't. Then you say, although I have never abused or cheated on her. So you're trying to take credit for being a good husband, as though not abusing her or cheating her was somehow making you a good person. Now, as I say this, mind you, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just pointing out the attitude you're taking so that you can see how it comes across to her. This is what I'm trying to get you to see. I'm not criticizing you, nor making fun of you. I want you to see how it comes across. And you're acting shocked that she would walk out on you, because here you are self-righteously saying, I've never abused her or cheated on her. How could she possibly do this to me? So again, so far you're taking zero responsibility. Next you say, I don't want to get a divorce, but I realize I can't force her to stay. Again, you're claiming to be the stable one. She wants to get a divorce, but of course you don't. Again, you're claiming to be the good one. And then you're also claiming to be gracious and not trying to force her to stay, which is actually kind of obvious. How would you force her to stay other than handcuffing her to the bed? Then you say, she has refused any type of marriage counseling and does not want to see or talk to me. Again, you're claiming to be the victimized one here, but something is wrong here. Here she is leaving you, and you're not addressing what is wrong here at all. You have claimed zero responsibility, and yet your wife is just somehow, out of the blue, walking out after 18 years of marriage. And what I'm telling you is that is impossible. So I wrote you, and I asked for more information because I said something's wrong with this picture. No responsibility, and yet she's leaving. And you sent me the following. You said, I asked for a little more truth-telling, and you'd only read, like 3 chapters of the Real Love Book, but you did pretty well. To your credit, you said, I made plenty of mistakes. First of all, I owned my own business, and I was a workaholic for the first 15 years of our marriage. She would stop by to see me at my jobs, and I was all business and showed her little affection while I was working. She came from a broken home where her parents divorced when she was 4 years old and would wait on her front porch for her dad to show up for visitation, and he wouldn't come. Then, to make matters worse, she would tell her mom she loved her, and her mom would then say, "Prove it." So, horrifying picture. So she heard from her parents all of her life, "I don't love you," and then you came along and said, "I don't love you either," thousands of times. So now do you get why she's leaving? All she's heard all of her life is, "I don't love you," and after 18 years of that married, and who knows how many years of that prior to that, so 40-something years, she's tired of hearing it. And then she says, "I don't want counseling." I'll bet she wants to shoot everybody. So it's completely understandable. So you say you want counseling, and she's going, "I don't believe you. I don't believe you're capable of changing. I don't believe anybody is. I am fed up." That's why. She's sick of hearing, "I don't love you," directed at her. She's had it. I mean, had it past expression. That's the wound. Then you said her parents tried to show her their love, not by loving her, but by buying her things. And her parents were 48 when she was born, so they were probably tired already. I was adopted at 10 weeks old and have had great parents who loved me beyond measure. Now, hold on, because again, I'm not criticizing you, but I doubt that very much, that you had parents who loved you beyond measure. First, you said you were a workaholic, which means that you were trying to prove your worth by working. That's the only reason people are workaholics. Which means that you are working for praise and power to fill an emptiness created by a lack of love. Second, you already demonstrated a complete inability to love your wife. So the possibility that you came from a really loving environment is close to zero. Even though you say you had parents who loved you beyond measure, the likelihood of that is just about none. You continue. Both my wife and I came from a church background of legalism, where the only way to be accepted was to obey a bunch of crazy rules, parenthesis, your words, conditional love, being imposed as God's law when it was really only man's rule. So you just confirmed what I just said, that it was not a home filled with love. You came from a home where you did a whole lot to earn approval that you got if you kept the rules, if you did the right thing. But then you were told that that was called love. But it was not love. It was just earning approval. But you believed it when you were told that it was love. And you believed that if you played that same conditionally loving game with your wife, that it would be love. But it was not. And she did not believe it. She didn't feel loved when you played that game with her. And now she's walking out on it, and you can't believe that she doesn't believe the game. Well, she doesn't, because she doesn't feel loved by you. So you're playing the same game that was played with you, and she doesn't buy it. That's how simple it is. After our marriage, you continued, I learned to make her happy. I could buy her things because that was what she was used to. What I got out of it was the security that I had someone who was there for me and supported me. And over the past several weeks that we've been going through this turmoil, I've discovered I have an extreme fear of abandonment that I think may stem from my early life of not being held and loved at birth through 10 weeks. Forgive me for smiling. I'm not smiling at your fear of abandonment, only at the modern day attachment to little theories like, well, I wasn't held from birth to 10 weeks. It's just all poop. All of us who don't feel loved have a fear of being abandoned. It's just that we want to be loved. Who doesn't? And then when we want to feel loved and we finally find somebody who shows us some kind of affection, like your wife, and then they say they're leaving, doesn't have anything to do with birth to 10 weeks. It scares us to death. Your fear is being abandoned right now. You didn't have to have not been held when you were 5 weeks old. You continue, I've had a difficult time sharing with my wife my true feelings and needs. Throughout my life, I was always the all-American kid who everybody told was great. Yeah, in your family, you earned praise by keeping the rules. And you were told you were great because you did keep the rules. But what was the rest of that sentence? And if you don't keep the rules, you won't be great. Do you see? That's why you became a workaholic. Because you had to constantly be earning the praise. Well, what a terrible life. So you were constantly earning the praise and the power, and then you got married and you just threw your wife away. Not a very happy way to live. I was the first in my family to go to college and graduate. I was always told I was the leader. I then took that information, and I thought if I was the leader, I had to be strong and never admit my fears or weaknesses, even with my wife. Well, yeah. You earned praise and power, and that involved never being weak or wrong. Unfortunately, never being weak or wrong means you're never intimate. And intimacy is what you've got to have real love, and your wife got sick of it. You continue. She thought that I didn't need anyone, not even her. That led to her feeling rejected by me and used by me. And she says that she knows I love her in her head, but she doesn't feel love toward or for me. Now listen to this next part because it's critical and you're going to hate it, but it's important. You say that she knows that you love her, but carefully listen, you don't. You really don't love her. Now, you say you do, you know you should, I know that you want to, but you don't. You don't know how. You were never loved unconditionally yourself. So how could you possibly be loving her unconditionally? And any other kind of love other than unconditional just frankly doesn't count. So you simply need to learn how to love her. It's not an accusation to tell you that you don't know how to love her unconditionally. You just were never taught how. So big deal. Notice there's no accusation about it. It's not like you should have. It's not like shame on you. You didn't learn. You were never shown how. But it's a huge problem because it's the thing missing in your marriage. Then you said, I asked her why she would not go to counseling, and she says, because for it to work, I have to become vulnerable. Now listen to what you say next. And she says, and I cannot do that anymore. And she says, because for it to work, I have to become vulnerable, and I cannot do it anymore. Yeah. Neither of you knows how to become vulnerable. Neither of you wants to experience any more pain in your life. But in order for your relationship to change, that's exactly what has to happen. But you'll be able to do it if you can do it in an unconditionally loving environment. And you can do that. You really can. And if you want to, you can write to me. Write to me at greg@reallove.com. And you can learn about how to do this. Or you can do it by going to the conference calls there on the website. You can do it by reading the Real Love book and doing the 40-day workbook together. There are a million different ways of doing it. But the worst thing to do at this point is having discovered a way to change all this and walking out and quitting at this point. You said, she says that I will do it on my own and I don't need anybody. I'm 41, she's 39, she's admitted she's in a real life crisis. She goes on, and you said things are just miserable essentially. So what I suggest you do at this point, because she's pretty much given up, is that you do a little bit more reading in the Real Love book so that you at least get the language down. Or in the Real Love and Marriage book. And then you talk to her and you say, because right now she doesn't want to do counseling because she doesn't believe you. All you've done is hurt her. Don't say, I love you. Don't do that. Because when you say, I love you, she hears the words and inside she's going, I don't believe it. Because your words don't match the way you behave. Do you see? It's a lie. She needs to hear the truth from you. So what is going to make much more difference is if you say to her, do you know, I realize now that I've completely screwed up our marriage. The truth is, I've been telling you I love you, when the real truth is, I've never known how. I've never even known what unconditional love is. What you've needed from me all these years was for me to unconditionally accept and love you. What you needed from me is for me to tell you the truth about myself, for me to be completely emotionally open and honest with you and available with you. And I've never done that. Make zero excuses for yourself, and her jaw will hit the floor. And then tell her, all I can promise you is this, is that I'm willing to learn. You tell her that. I'm willing to start over and willing to learn how to love you, as stupid as I am. And all I'm asking of you is, are you willing to stay with me for a little longer while I learn? And if you're willing, I have some principles here that are teaching me just how stupid I've been. And if you'd like, I can share with you some of these principles so you can see what's caused me to wake up. And if she'd like, you can introduce her to me or to some of the people on the internet or on the website or whatever, and show her what you're learning about unconditional love, so that you can create just that first little ray of hope in her life, so that she doesn't give up. And then you can begin the process of healing. I can introduce you to a real love coach, which is what I'd really recommend that you do, so that the two of you can begin to be coached through the healing process, because she needs to just have an inkling that things can change with you. And that will only happen as you begin to really tell the truth about yourself with her. But if you will, there really is a possibility. And here we are 2 days before Christmas. Gee, what a Christmas present would that be to her, huh? To start off with that and begin the new year with the truth and the possibility of real love in your life. Woohoo, huh? So, this is a good lesson in here for all of us, huh? It can really get terrible, and I've seen marriages actually way worse than yours. Go from this point to the beginning of truth-telling, to acceptance, to just enormous blossoming. And this is good for all of us. It's not complicated. It's really the same step over and over again. We tell the truth about ourselves. We create the opportunity for people to unconditionally love us. As we feel more loved, we share that love with others, and it just exponentially multiplies as we share it with those around us. So I look forward to seeing you a week from today, which would be 2 days before New Year's. And between now and then, have a very Merry Christmas, and remember that it's always about real love. We'll see you then.